Hi, everybody. This is Tom from the Paperback Warrior podcast. This is the last Monday that we will be on vacation. We're going to be returning next Monday with an all-new episode for you to kick off the new year. I'm just ducking into the studio to tell you what we have for you as a placeholder today. The other week, I went into Chamblin's Book Mine, our local bookstore here, and I bought 4 books in the Western section that appeared to be a series of sorts by an author named Alex Hawke. They were thin paperbacks with big fonts and great cover art. The books I got were Pecos Swap, Mexican Standoff, Blood Trail, and Gunslick. It turns out these books were not a series, but rather a branded line of books under the Alex Hawke house name pseudonym. As I started researching the Alex Hawke books, I went down a rabbit hole and decided that I needed to do a podcast segment on this weird brand of violent, thin westerns. Fortunately or unfortunately, our friends at the Six Gun Justice podcast beat me to the punch. Back in August 2020, Paul Bishop did a 10-minute mini episode on that Six Gun Justice podcast without his broadcast partner, Richard Prosch, where Paul explains the Alex Hawke phenomenon. Paul was nice enough to let us replay that for you today in our podcast feed. So thank you, Paul, for that. You should check out the Six Gun Justice podcast wherever you get your shows, as well as their website, sixgunjustice.com. I'm going to let Paul do the talking from here on out, and we're going to see you next week for an all-new episode of Paperback Warrior. Happy New Year, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to this Speed Listen installment of the Six Gun Justice podcast, featuring everything you need to know, or at least everything I know, about the hidden identities of the authors who wrote a series of westerns under the Alex Hawke pseudonym, all in under 15 minutes. I'm Paul Bishop. My comrade Richard Prosch and I co-host the full-length episodes of the Six Gun Justice podcast, but ride solo for our own Speed Listen bonus installment. Between 1968 and 1971, Paperback Library published 20 slim Western novels under the house name Alex Hawke. They were uniformly packaged with cool Western pulp-style illustrations on the cover, and I really dug both the aesthetics of the series and the stories themselves. The books in the series were akin to eating Lay's potato chips. You can't read just one, which meant when I discovered the first 3 in a used bookstore and finished reading them, I had to track down all 20. That was the easy part. The hard part began when I tried to identify the actual authors, which has turned out to be harder than figuring out who the wordslingers are writing behind the non-disclosure agreements for the William Johnstone brand. A big part of the reason it's harder is because the Alex Hawke books were written 50 years ago, and whatever sign left behind for a tracker to follow has been covered over by the sifting sands. The indications are there were at least 10 writers, and perhaps as many as 15, behind the Alex Hawke house name. Some may have written only one title, some 2 or 3, and at least one 5. All of the books were standalones, featuring different heroes, with the exception of 3 books featuring the character of half-breed sheriff Elfago O'Reilly, written by a big-name wordslinger who I'll unmask in a second, which puts a picture in my head of a guy in a mask pounding away furiously on his battered Olivetti. But perhaps that's more than a little far-fetched. There can be no doubt I've spent more time banging my head against search engines trying to figure this out than the mystery is actually worth. However, I did manage to discover there were some heavyweight Western wordslingers behind the pseudonym of Alex Hawke, as well as some lesser lights. The problem of author identification starts with the copyright of all the books being assigned to Coronet Communications. There is no indication of the actual authors, either on the title page inside the books or in the U.S. copyright listings. And any information pertaining to Coronet Communications has disappeared into the ionosphere along with the company itself. If I was to make an educated guess, it wouldn't be unusual for a company like Coronet Communications to act as a book packager. The most likely scenario is Popular Library asks Coronet to create a Western series, expecting Coronet to find the authors for the series, edit the books, and then turn them over to Popular Library to publish. However, a packaged series built around a pseudonym, Alex Hawke, instead of a recurring character would be very unusual. This begs the question, Did Popular Library come up with the Alex Hawk house name, which would be the most likely scenario, or did an editor at Coronet pull it out of thin air? It also makes you wonder if Alex Hawk was actually supposed to be the name of the series character, and somewhere in the process, it ended up as a shared author alias. It could have been a miscommunication between Popular Library and Coronet, but that's another mystery about these books which will never be solved at this late date. As it is, this is a mystery only Sheriff Minuchai, aka me, would worry about solving. But again, these are the kind of details hardcore genre fans thrive on, right? Possibly I am confusing Western fans with Star Trek fanatics, a mistake that might lead directly to a Six Gun Justice podcast cosplay contest. But I digress. Let's get back to making a long story longer. I have no doubt the books were contracted as work-for-hire gigs. These would be contracts accepted by the writers needing to make a quick buck by turning out in a week or two what in reality was a 50,000-word story, too long to qualify as a novella, but barely long enough to be called a novel. The books published under the Alex Hawk pseudonym were stripped-down, guns-blazing, fist-flying actioneers that would have been right at home in the best of the old-school Western pulps. My favorite Alex Hawk book is Savage Guns, which made sense when I learned it was written by Brian Garfield. With some more digging, I was able to discover the highly respected Elmer Kelton also donned the identity of Alex Hawk when he penned Shotgun Settlement. Kelton would later republish Shotgun Settlement under his own name using the slightly revamped title Shotgun. It's hard to say if Kelton officially got the rights back for Shotgun Settlement, or if Coronet Communications was so completely defunct the issue of rights conversion was a moot point. However, Kelton was an upright guy, so I'm going to assume the best and say the rights reverted to him at some point. Unusual for a work-for-hire gig, but not impossible. Checking several standard biographical sources for Kelton and Garfield, I confirmed Alex Hawk was listed as a pseudonym for both. The sources further confirmed Savage Guns as Garfield's Alex Hawk title, and Shotgun Settlement as Kelton's. Since there were no other Alex Hawk titles listed for either author in their bibliographies, I think it's safe to assume their tenure as Alex Hawk was confined to a single outing. Calling out my copy of Hawk's pseudonyms, a regular go-to reference work for me, I checked the listing for Alex Hawk. Both Garfield and Kelton were again confirmed, along with several other Alex Hawk stand-ins. These included well-known Western wordslinger Giles Lutz and two other lesser-known scribes, Johannes Boma and Joseph Chadwick. This was a definite step forward in solving the enigma of Alex Hawk. However, there was no indication of which Alex Hawk books Boma or Chadwick had written. My next stop was 20th Century Western Writers, another fantastic reference if you can find a copy. The entry for Giles Lutz was a bonanza, crediting him with 5 Alex Hawk titles: Tough Down, Drifter's Luck, and the 3 books I mentioned earlier featuring the character of Elphago O'Reilly, Mex, Half-Breed, and Mexican Standoff. Frustratingly, the entries for Boma and Chadwick did not show Alex Hawk as a pseudonym for either of them, nor did any Alex Hawk titles appear in the listings of their works, but more on them later. While researching the recent Western TV tie-ins episode of the Six Gun Justice podcast, the name Owen Dean, a pseudonym used regularly by the prolific Dudley Dean McCaughey, was credited on many of the Western tie-in novels. I was looking through his extensive bibliography when I came across the titles of 2 books, Pecos Swap and Blood Trail, which he wrote as Alex Hawk. Bingo! Another wordslinger unmasked from behind the Alex Hawk pseudonym, along with 2 more titles with solid attribution. At this point, my Alex Hawk dance card was filling up. Garfield and Kelton each wrote 1 identified Alex Hawk title, Owen Dean wrote 2 identified titles, and Giles Lutz is the top scorer with 5 identified Alex Hawk titles assigned to him. This leaves Johannes Boma and Joseph Chadwick identified as authors, but not the books they wrote or how many, and there are 11 titles still not matched to authors. It was time for a deep dive into the mysteries of the Internet. My search for Johannes Boma turned up nothing of interest. However, when I searched for J.L. Boma, the results came back with the cover of the Danish edition of McGee under a title I can't pronounce. Score 1 for Google. I kept digging and found a reference to the Danish edition for Gunslick with Joseph Chadwick behind the Alex Hawk pseudonym. A second score for Google. There were a number of other Alex Hawk titles published in German, Swedish, and Danish editions, but no further information as to the authors disguised as Alex Hawk. The titles had also been changed, and it was difficult to match them to the original titles. I dug into the bibliographies of a number of other prolific wordslingers, such as Wayne D. Overholzer, Roy Hogan, and T.V. Olson, who were possible suspects to have donned the identity of Alex Hawk. But so far I have been unable to uncover any solid confirmation of their involvement. Currently, the score stands at 6 authors identified, along with 11 titles they wrote as Alex Hawk, leaving 9 titles with unidentified authors. The trail may be cold, but I am relentless, and the search goes on. If anyone out there knows any more information pertaining to the Alex Hawk books, please drop Sheriff Minuchai an email at sixgunjusticewesterns@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to this bonus Speed Listen installment of the Six Gun Justice podcast. Remember to check out our website at www.sixgunjustice.com for regularly updated reviews, articles, and interviews from the best of the Western wordslingers. Six Gun Justice podcast episodes, Speed Listen installments, and Six Gun Justice conversations are available on all major streaming platforms. Till next time, be safe, stay healthy, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and keep your face off wanted posters. Adios. Let's ride.